This Fire Knight build harnesses the power of the Spear of the Impaler, a powerful weapon you can obtain from killing one of Shadow of the Erdtree's main bosses, Messmer the Impaler. It's not an easy fight, but for those who manage to complete this task, will gain access to one of the best faith and dex scaling weapons in the entire game. Quick shout out to our sponsor, Damn Mods. If you don't have time to grind for items or runes, Damn Mods will help you max out your character incredibly fast. This service works on all platforms, has a 5-star rating on Trustpilot, and can make your experience way more enjoyable. Don't forget to use my code ColdBwoyy at checkout for up to $100 off. The Fire Knight build focuses primarily on increasing the effectiveness of Messmer's Assault, a new, unique weapon skill exclusive to the Spear of the Impaler, which unleashes a fierce succession of attacks using a flame-coated spear. Repeated inputs allow for up to 2 additional attacks and finishes the combo with a final move that thrusts the spear into the ground, causing countless spears to rise up and pierce your enemies. The first input is great for sweeping the area and burning all enemies in front of you. It also has decent range, allowing you to hit targets that are not directly within your reach. This is extremely helpful during boss fights or against enemies that are very deadly and require a bit of distance to stay out of harm's way. The second input unleashes a powerful flurry of stabs with your spear, and the final input deals AoE damage and is able to stagger or knock down most enemies. Not only is this weapon skill incredibly powerful, but it barely requires any FP to execute, which means you can spam it more often without having to rely on FP flasks or investing a high amount of level points into Mind, for example. In addition to this amazing weapon skill, the Spear of the Impaler has a unique heavy attack that allows you to throw your spear, dealing fire damage in the process. This heavy attack can be charged for more damage and can be executed while riding your horse, making Messmer's Spear one of the most versatile faith scaling weapons in the game. The damage of this throw can be increased with the right talismans as well. The armor you wear with this build can also increase your damage. The Winged Serpent helmet increases the damage of Fire Knight skills, adding 10% extra damage to Messmer's Assault. Surprisingly, Messmer's Assault is really effective against enemies who are resistant to fire damage, but doesn't quite deal enough poise damage to stagger enemies for critical strikes. I would recommend having at least 50 poise on your build just so you aren't constantly being interrupted or staggered when you're trying to execute the entire Messmer's Assault combo. But I will say this weapon is very strong, reliable, and works against every enemy in the game, making it one of the best boss weapons in Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. Your stats for this build will look something like this. You'll typically want your vigor to be at least 60 for this build because the protection is very low and the enemies in the DLC hit very hard. I do have 25 mind, but honestly this can be reduced to 20 since the Messmer's Assault weapon skill doesn't use much FP at all. I also have 25 endurance, so I can equip the Spear of the Impaler and the necessary armor to reach at least 50 poise. You'll need at least 14 strength and 35 dexterity to wield the spear, and since it scales the highest with dexterity, I increased my dex to 43 so I could add a bit more physical attack power. The highest stat on this build is faith at 80. The higher your faith, the more fire damage you will deal with Messmer's Assault. Your incantations will also do more damage as you increase faith over time, but you shouldn't have to go any higher than 80. The main weapon on this build is a fully upgraded Spear of the Impaler. This spear can only be obtained after killing Messmer and trading in his remembrance. This boss fight is tough, so I would recommend using anything you can to kill him. I used a dexterity focused bleed build with one of Shadow of the Erdtree's new weapons, the backhand blades. I actually have a whole video dedicated to this build, so if you want to see a complete breakdown including stats, armor, and which talismans to use, I'll put a link at the top of the screen right now. It seems like blood loss is the best tactic to use against Messmer. You can see here 342 physical attack power, 410 fire attack power, B tier scaling for dex, and C tier scaling for faith. In my left hand I have the Fire Knight seal. This seal is perfect for this build because it boosts the damage of Messmer's Flame Incantations. To get this seal, you will need to enter Shadowkeep from the eastern side. This will require you to travel through the Morth Ruins and Bonnie Village, and then past Rabbith Rise. When you first arrive in this area, you'll notice that it's completely flooded. This is the route you will need to take in order to drain the water and access the area that contains the Fire Knight seal. The main incantations on this build will be Golden Vow, which increases your offense by 15% and defense by 10%, Flame Grant Me Strength, which increases your physical and fire affinity attack power by 20%, and Fire Serpent, which is your main fire spell and benefits from the damage boost of the Fire Knight seal. These are the only incantations I use, but feel free to use any incantations you want since you have 80 faith on the build. The first piece of armor I'm using is the Winged Serpent Helm, which enhances Fire Knight skills. This helmet will increase the damage of Messmer's Assault by 10%. This helmet is dropped by one of the mini bosses inside of Shadow's Keep right before the Messmer boss fight. Next, I'm using the Fire Knight chest piece, which increases the damage of Messmer's flame incantations. This chest piece can be farmed by killing the Fire Knight enemies located inside of Shadow's Keep. The gloves and greaves are completely up to you, but just remember to reach at least 50 poise with your armor so you won't be interrupted while using Messmer's Assault. The talismans I'm using focus heavily on increasing the effectiveness of Messmer's Assault. First, I have the Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, which enormously boosts physical damage negation. Next, the Shard of Alexander, which greatly boosts the attack power of skills, adding 15% extra damage to Messmer's Assault. I'm also using the Fire Scorpion Charm, which increases fire damage by 12%. And lastly, the Axe Talisman, which increases the damage of your charged heavy throwing attacks by 10%. For my Wondrous Physick mix, I'm using the Flame Shrouding Cracked Tear, which boosts the damage of your fire attacks, and the Spiked Cracked Tear, which boosts the damage of your charged heavy throwing attacks. This is easily one of the best weapons in the game right now, and I highly recommend giving it a try. If you think dexterity builds are more of your playstyle, I just dropped an insanely powerful dexterity focused bleed build using one of the best weapons in the DLC, the Backhand Blades. I'll put a link at the top of the screen right now for those who are interested. I have so many more Elden Ring videos coming soon, and I'm so grateful for all the support you guys have been showing me. We are very close to 100k subs, and it's all thanks to you. If you enjoyed this video, a thumbs up would be greatly appreciated. If you want to see more Elden Ring videos just like this one coming soon, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on those bell notifications so you are notified every time I drop a new video.